Pixel Theater, everyone. My name is Nick Noel, and I am one of your co-hosts.
Player 2 has entered the game. I am the other co-host, Ron Stratton. Hello.
And this is, as I said, Pixel Theater. It is a podcast, if you can believe it, if you've ever heard of such a thing. I think we're the first ones to do it.
I think we are.
Especially, at the very least, the first ones to do one about movies and video games.
Oh, yeah.
Untapped
market.
So this is a show about film adaptations of video games. Which ones are good? Which ones are bad? We're here to tell you. And today we're going to talk about, I'm going to say one of the, not worst, but certainly not best ones, and that is Hitman.
Most believe his very existence is a sin. But others know he is a necessary evil.
Starring Timothy Olyphant and some woman whose name I will not attempt to pronounce, even though we tried multiple times before we started recording.
I'm a big fan, and any attempt to pronounce her last name will be very disrespectful. So I'm just going to call her Olga, the girl from Oblivion, who I think is really pretty and a really good actress.
Olga Kurylenko. Something like that.
Yeah.
Kurylenko.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
sure,
let you
that's
take lead on
probably
that
fine. I don't know. I feel like my Russian ancestors are spinning around in their graves right now. So.
They are.
But that's okay, I guess. They were all killed by the communists, so it's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of killing, this movie did a thing.
Hitman. We're gonna oh, hey, by the way, everyone, we're talking about Hitman. This is episode 20 something. And we finally have figured out what our segments are and what we should call them. So
be prepared structure.
Yeah, exactly. Prepare to have your hats blown off and your socks, at the very least, ruffled, because we are going to go into our first segment, our feature presentation. See, it's kind of got like some of them have like a theater theme because we're Pixel Theater. Mm-hmm. We're very clever. I just want you guys to know that. So, Rod.
Yes, sir. How
Hitman, 2007.
2007.
Directed by Xavier Gaines. Is that his name?
Yeah, or Gaines?
Gaines.
Boy, we are on a roll with names today.
You know, it's fine.
When did John Wick bless us with his presence?
Oh, God, I feel like 2013, 2014.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that? Why do you ask? Is it relevant or are you just curious?
Slightly relevant. I don't know if this movie's fault that John Wick exists, and this came out before it, but it's interesting that I can go back and revisit a movie like Blade. There's so many options that I can kind of forgive for like being a product of their time. But just watching this, like every action set piece was kind of boring, despite the fact that I really love like Timothy Olyphant. Like, I won't say he chews the scenery, but he's just very charismatic. He's got the silhouette, like he's got the look. Like, you'll have to take point on this because I'm not as like this is surprisingly a game franchise I never stuck with. Although I played a lot of 2 and I liked 2. But the most I've played out of anything in the Hitman, this is so bad, is the sniping game for the iPhone they released. Sure. It was really fun though. I liked it a lot. But so I think as a video game player, you look at him and go, all right, this guy's a good casting choice for the blank bald man who's my protagonist. The one thing I wanted to jump out, like the only time where I rolled my eyes in the movie was the cameo of the game. That was way too on point. Do you remember that?
They had somebody playing Hitman in it? I didn't even notice that.
Blatantly. So he rolls. So it's when he's like, oh my God, they're going to blow up my hotel room. Right when he's like been betrayed. And he runs in slow motion. And like, as an editor, there's like 3 seconds that I would have cut because Timothy looks like, are you still rolling? Are you still rolling? But he jumps through the window and it's 2 kids sitting on a bed. And he looks up at them and he looks at the TV and kind of does like a scoff and walks away. And the TV racks focus and it's Hitman. And it's just like him standing there looking like wearing the same costume he's wearing in that scene. So it was right away that I was like, that was weird. Like if you didn't know the video
maybe
game,
that takes you a little out of it. I don't know.
That's the thing. Even if you didn't play the game, you'd be like, what just happened there? Why was he in the game?
That's on par with the Street Fighter where they open up the Street Fighter movie where they like open up his like doomsday device or whatever it is, and it's just the arcade controllers.
Yeah, that's we.
This is the most efficient way to launch weapons: is these two buttons and a joystick.
What, 13 years later, they still haven't gotten the point?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
No,
that's the only thing blatantly bad, though. You know, like it feels like a movie, so it doesn't have that kind of sheen that we've dealt with recently, like Max Payne, where it's like, oh, this is good Uwe Boll. You know what I mean? Like it felt like a movie.
It does feel like somebody was like, how do you make this a movie? Let me think about it for more than 8 seconds.
We should get a production designer and some lighting, you know? And
we should understand what the limitations and advantages of this genre are.
Yeah. So that's the plus I can give it, really, is there could be no, like, you could not know this is a video game and the movie you'll enjoy.
Yeah, if you didn't know it was a video game, you'd just be like, oh, what a bad movie.
What a bad movie we spent our $5.75 in 2007 movie theaters. No, I'm sure it was still expensive then.
So I mean, I would say in general I agree, like it does, like similarly to like Prince of Persia and stuff like that, it feels like an actual movie that people spend time on.
That's fair. If we were to separate these in the boxes, like there'd be the Prince of Persia box, and we kind of scoot this into that grid.
It's not the Double Dragon box or that
one's on the floor,
the Alone in the Dark box. The boxes that we leave under the bed and just forget about. But I don't know, I kind of disagree that Timothy Olyphant was a good choice. Because Timothy Olyphant's a good actor, but he doesn't do well with like blank, like menacing characters.
So I guess that's my question for you, because he's supposed to be like an emotionless killing machine, right? Yeah. Timothy can't help but have the little like.
No, he conveys a little too much.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
He seems to like be too like partially a little too like, I feel soulful or like I would say that. And then he's always just like feels like they cut right before he started smirking about something. Like he always wants to like smile and he knows he's not allowed to, and I think it drives him crazy.
Right.
Because he doesn't use like his full range of tools. Like, you know, the most at this point now he's probably best known for being in Justified, which is, you know, Justified's an amazing show. He's amazing in it. Raylan Givens is such a great, like, badass character. But Raylan is always, like, cocky and self-confident and, but always, like, just kind of, like, above the situation, you know? And it doesn't work as well. That style doesn't work in this, where you're supposed to be, like you were saying, like a motionless kind of robot person.
It's funny though that that's such a good property, a vehicle that he's on, but I always think of Die Hard 4.
How about that fourth one when that dude from Justified, he was the bad guy, he had the guns and whatnot? Timothy Olyphant. Timothy Olyphant.
Like, he wasn't really on my radar before that movie, you know, so I remember thinking, oh, I don't like this movie, but wow, that guy's really good. And then Justified and all that stuff. So,
you know, it's interesting, I was looking up a little bit of the production history of this movie, and like, so this movie was very much on my radar because, like, I think Silent Assassin, Hitman 2 was like the first one I played. And that was around 2002, 2003, something like that. So this movie came out, maybe it was even 2004. I don't know. Anyway, this movie was in production and it was originally going to be Vin Diesel. And I think the only reason is because, like, Vin Diesel's in action movies and he's bald.
Yeah,
so like, obviously he should be the one to be.
So.
And if you know who Vin Diesel is, that doesn't make any sense. For like, that makes less sense than Timothy Olyphant.
I mean, I don't mean to shit on the guy because I kind of like him, but he would have that blank stare down pretty good if you need him just to be like a brick wall.
But it's also like, it's the same way of like, not in exactly the same way, but like, Vin Diesel comes across to me as like a big personality. Like, he's outgoing, he's energetic, he has, you know, some form of charisma. And that is not this character. You know, he's not a blank slate, but he's not like you're not drawn to him. You know, you're terrified of him, but you're not drawn to him. And so, like, I think when Vin Diesel fell through, it probably helped this movie, although I kind of want to see what that movie would have been like, because it wouldn't have been a Hitman movie, but it might have been an interesting movie.
It would have been Triple X, but he's like in a suit. Like that's it. Because God, now you say that, a lot of choices in this movie make sense, because there was a lot of that Triple X vibe, like Olga and his relationship with the girls, very much like how that movie was. Like, I bet you this was a Vin Diesel vehicle, and they're like, oh shit, get someone else in the Rolodex, and went to Timothy.
Yeah, I wonder if they adjusted the characterization when Vin Diesel like dropped out, because like if you've ever played the games, there's never a love interest. He's not that character. Like they really just avoid the whole thing. In very rarely have they had him like kissed by a woman. I think it was maybe once, and the implication is like that's the first woman who's ever kissed him. Sure. And in the original game, he was like disgusted by it, and in I think in a remake he was like maybe slightly more into it, but he's never been like a sexual
ladies
creature.
Man. Right.
And they kind of played off that here, where Timothy Olyphant seems like protective, but just asexual for the most part.
Yeah, I got that.
I do wonder if Vin Diesel would have been like just totally on board and just let's fuck, let's do
a couple Coronas and go to the beach. The Pueblo El family.
Kind of like, I do think if they ever did a God of War, it should be Vin Diesel though.
Yeah,
at least 5 years ago.
5 years ago for sure. Yeah.
Because he's got that like screaming with a weird
I don't know.
In a very gruff voice down.
It's tough. If you were to ask me when the first God of War came out, I'd be like 100%. But really thinking about it, like old Kratos is more like from the last God of War is who I'm picturing. So I almost want more of a thespian, but I'm blanking on who I'd pick.
I'd have to think about that. Maybe
wait for them to screw up the Hollywood adaptation of that.
Maybe like an Alexander Skarsgård, something like that. He's Norse, not Greek, but
I mean, if he's
Scandinavian.
But if they adapted the last game, it's more of a Scandinavian flair. So
they probably wouldn't start there though, right? You probably don't start with.
You never know. right, they're gone.
That's true. What else about this game? This movie. Like you were saying, it is weird. These things we've noticed with a lot of these action movies, it is boring. And I'm not sure what that is. I think it's because I can't like latch on to the character at all.
Yeah, I don't know.
There isn't anything that's like making me care that he's in danger, that anybody's in danger, that anybody's attacking them. Like they just use the action as the engagement tool, if you will, but they don't do a good enough job making the action interesting.
It never was on my radar until I watched the RoboCop remake, and that movie was interesting because everything that wasn't a set piece was fascinating to me. Like they have this soldier who lost his arms, they give him new arms, he's playing the guitar, and it's really a neat emotional scene. And then he's jumping over Ed 209s, and I was like, I just was like no excitement whatsoever. And there's a musicality to action movies, I think, that you need to get right. If it doesn't find that tone and like have a rhythm, if it's just like but even Fast and the Furious, at least you're like, wow, that doesn't make sense, but that was interesting. He jumped over a tank. This didn't have any like emotional connection because I guess it's not linking you to the characters very well.
It doesn't feel like the character's doing anything cool. They are just following a pre-programmed.
There's only so far you can take the drawn slow motion two guns look. Like I think he did that like 7 times in the movie, and it's supposed to get you excited. I never did. I'm trying to be like. I was
thinking about John Woo movies, who like I think everybody's trying to emulate, but they forget the part where he earned it and earned the cool part. It looks
and cool. There's another
and there's all these like interesting stuff. Like I remember I watched. I'm not going to be able to remember the name, unfortunately, but it was one John Woo did with I think Chow Yun Fat or
Hard Boiled.
Yeah, Hard Boiled. Thank you. And like that's a great movie, and I didn't understand the movie at all. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah,
but I just loved like all these set pieces where it's just like escalation, and then it gives you time to breathe, and then it's escalation. and
or like the raid,
and it seems like the characters are actually doing something, and it's difficult, and they're in danger.
Any movie like this that comes out, I immediately want to compare it to the raid, because it's inherently a video game movie, just in the sense of like, you've got to enter the building and work your way up the levels and get to the bad guy, and it just does it so much better. Like you're rooting for the guy. When he gets hurt, you cringe, and like you're rooting for him the whole way, and it's so exciting, and you just can't wait to see the next set piece. And so I think that's the problem with these movies, is there's so many references to other things, so there's this edge of it wanting to be John Woo. There's the Bourne Identity movies, so like, I've seen this car chase but better, or I've seen this fight but better. There are moments I liked, and like, so little bits, I don't know if that's necessarily from the game, but I know in the game, like, wearing different costumes is a key factor. And I liked how smoothly he walked her through the airport and like grabbed the coat and put it on. And oh god, am I blanking? Am I confusing the movies though? I might be confusing.
No, that happened.
Okay,
they did a lot of costume switching in both movies. But that happened in this one.
Okay, I was this one. I wasn't sure. I was like, wait a minute, I might be confusing the Hitman movies. But yeah, there's that, and I like the standoff on the train, as silly as it was and nonsensical. It was fun. They had them all pointing their guns and like, let's do this like men, and and they put them away. They all happen to have the same swords, which makes sense because they're from the same.
Yeah, the same like organization.
Yeah,
I would say like, yes, that was fun, but it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
It really doesn't at all.
The Mexican standoff thing only works when there are different sides.
Yeah.
They propositioned a scenario where it was just 3-on-1. So why didn't the third guy just shoot Timothy Olyphant in the face?
And why is the third guy pointing a gun at his friend?
Why are they pointing a gun at each other? They're on the same team. It doesn't make any sense.
How do you say that? That's really dumb. So, yeah, okay. But I don't know. Those are little moments that I remember writing, like, that's cool. And
and I was also reading like that scene was actually added
really?
To like make it more actiony. So that was a reshoot. The original director or the only director actually got taken off the project because nobody liked his cut. So they brought in a different guy. I'll have to look up his name, but and they had somebody else do reshoots, and that was one of the reshoots to just add more like action elements.
How do you say that? It definitely feels tonally very different than the rest, like all of a sudden there's like, it didn't jump out at me initially, but not thinking back, I'm like, okay, that's definitely a reshoot.
So this is kind of funny. So Nicholas Detoth, I guess, was the editor to do a recut of the film.
Okay.
He was actually the same one who recut Live Free or Die Hard, which also had Timothy Olyphant in it.
Interesting.
So that guy's just been adjusting Mr. Oliphant's work
for years. He just follows him around the Hollywood wasteland.
And I guess it's in Live Free or Die Hard, it was to tone it down to PG-13.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
And
it's so interesting, man. Like, because I'm still, you ask people post Star Wars clusterfuck that we're living in, and like Rogue One arguably came through
wait,
the
hold on. Is your postulation that the Star Wars thing is the worst thing that's happening right now?
Oh, no. I mean,
everything's gone to shit ever since Star Wars came out.
I'm blaming all of it on Rise of Skywalker. No, but the mess, ignoring the worldwide horrific pandemic, just in the Star Wars space. Arguably, Rogue One's the best one, but that one is my most like, man.
Yeah,
there's a good.
It's the most
tampered
movie-y. It's the one that tampered with.
Well, it's movie-y, but it's also really like everything in that first trailer didn't make it in the movie. So there's a first cut that was very politically, like, I think they liked Gareth Edwards. God, why am I blanking on that right now? I think they liked him, but so they didn't run him through the shitter, and I don't think they wanted the publicity that would later go on to Han Solo's movie. But I think they didn't like his cut, and we ended up with this hodgepodge of put more Darth Vader in it. Like,
the more you say about this, like, the more obvious it is that like Disney has really been fucking with the Star Wars movies for the entire run they've had. Like, I don't think they know what to do with these movies, because and it's not like everybody's like talks about I can't remember the person who's in charge of them right now.
Kathleen Kennedy.
Kennedy. Like, Kathleen Kennedy knows what the fuck she's doing. She's been producing movies for 30 years.
Longer than I've been alive.
She's not an idiot.
Her name's in the opening credits of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, she's not an idiot. I just don't think she cares necessarily about Star Wars the way that Kevin Feige cares about Marvel.
Yes, that's the problem. There's no one like Kevin. Yeah. They don't have a Kevin Feige. That's why the DC movies didn't work.
Well, they had a Zack Snyder, and that's a problem in itself.
Yeah.
But, Zack Snyder, I don't know how much he cares about DC more as he cares about a certain style.
He's got a style, and that's, and he's going to do it his way, but it's not a worldwide, I love that rumor about Kevin Feige's desk, and he had the course of movies plotted to 2028. That means there's a plan, and
you can adjust the plan if you need to, but that's the point, is Kevin Feige, he's been working at Marvel forever. He cares about this stuff. He knows the characters. I don't think, regardless of how good you are at producing movies, you have to care about Star Wars in a very in your bones kind of way. You have to care about the DC universe in a very in your bones kind of way.
There's an aesthetic. When the dust is settled, even though it set things up poorly, the promise wasn't delivered on. I will always look back really fondly on The Force Awakens, even though it's a complete writer's room retread of episode 4. I get all the negatives about it. The excitement and the promise of it was so great. J.J. Abrams did a really good job on that, in my opinion. But looking back at it, once the dust is settled, who they needed was Jon Favreau. Because Jon Favreau and the creator of Clone Wars, who are running Mandalorian right now, are the guys who care. I mean, if you watch the making of Mandalorian, there's a scene where Jon Favreau, a kid, giddily walks up to George Lucas, look, we kept this like the movie. And George is like, I don't even remember that. He had no clue. And Jon Favreau was so adamant that it had to be perfect because it was, and George didn't even care. So you need that passion. If Jon Favreau would have been in charge from the beginning, much better prequel.
I absolutely agree. And I would also say that it's as much as enjoyable as I found Force Awakens, because oh no, a Star Wars movie that feels like all the other Star Wars movies, oh no, what are we gonna do? Isn't the that's
this
fine.
Isn't a demo
I don't have a problem with
ILM?
that.
Weird.
As much as you love Star Wars, they're not the most original. They steal from everything, just like all movies,
I'm already gearing up because I'm so excited for Dune.
We're talking,
and they ripped off
too much
Dune.
about Star Wars.
No, good point. Well, that's the problem though with this movie. The movie again falls into this category that didn't offend me. It's not bad. It's just the problem is it's just average.
I'll say it's as somebody who has been playing these games for so long, I saw this movie in theaters. I No, it's not drugged. I dragged Lauren. Lauren and I had been dating for maybe a year and a half, 2 years when this movie came out.
Okay.
I am almost positive she almost broke up with me for making her see it. But I just left that movie angry. And I wasn't angry this time. I was just kind of bored. Yeah. And it was better than I remembered it being. I think it's because I have more affection for Timothy Olyphant than I did before this.
Yeah.
But he's not the character, and they're not doing a good job portraying the character, and they're not doing a good job portraying the movie or the game. They introduce this love interest character, and usually there aren't any ancillary characters. It's not at least in the games I was familiar with, you're not there's no escort missions for the most part, and there isn't usually big climactic kind of gunfights. The game is really bad as if you try and play it as a first person shooter or as a shooter game. It's a stealth puzzle game.
That's the thing. You want to get to the mission.
The puzzle is how do I murder this man? But that's a puzzle. How do I sneak through and do this, and get these series of events to happen, especially in the later games where you can make accidents happen and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is very much turns it into these action, big set pieces. And if that happens in the game, you messed up.
Yeah, right.
You did something wrong.
Did it ever do anything that was a reference to the game as far as did he do any missions in this? Obviously it was the setup, the assassination, which
the assassination in the bathroom, that felt like a Hitman kind of mission where he poisoned him and subtly and then tricked the guys. But then the part where they like came into the bathroom and he shot him, like, again, that's you messed up if that happens,
right.
you know, like, so there were some subtle things, but like a lot of the like the train station stuff, like that shit doesn't happen. Like you don't fight 4 guys. Like,
right.
So yeah, that's the parts where it made it feel kind of weird. I would say like I found it annoying because I find like flashback 3 months ago kind of storytelling I find to be kind of lazy, but to be fair, that shit happens all the time in Hitman. Like there is so many like, you know, Agent 47 being shot on a bed, like reliving his past contracts, and that's the whole game. That's literally Hitman contracts, which is just like, how do we redo the first game? And then that's Hitman contracts.
He'll think about it.
Like, we've got better graphics now.
Have there been a lot of remasters? Like, I feel like I've seen 3 different versions of like the same Hitman 2, but I wasn't sure what was going on there.
I mean, not a ton of remasters. I know they re-released like the first, the second, the third, and the fourth game eventually, but I haven't seen a lot of it, and I think they've kind of abandoned them at this point because they're kind of starting over. So, and which bums me out because I was like dying to try and play Hitman 2 again, and I just can't. Like, I can't find it.
That's what bummed me out because I think I remember seeing like on the PlayStation Network, it was like, here's a collection. You get Hitman, Blood Money, and blah blah. And I was like, no, I'm old, so I'm thinking of the Hitman 2 that was really Hitman 2. I want to play that one, and you couldn't find it anywhere. So, what's your thoughts? I mean, I don't know if you want to save it for later in the podcast, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the pay to permission kind of style of the newer games that they want.
So I'm cheap.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about, I rarely buy new games. So what I do is the newest Hitman that came out, I think I talked about I was playing it maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And that was like the 2016, 2017, something like that.
Oh, okay, yep.
It's like they started, like I said, they rebooted it basically.
Yeah. It was the reboot before the reboot, right?
Yeah. So I just bought that like recently.
Okay.
So I don't, you know, I do kind of view the like mission ones as like a money grab. You know, they're trying to get you to spend more, but at the same time, those levels, if you're really into it, are infinitely replayable because you can just keep trying to get better. You can try and do it different ways and stuff. I got a little too obsessed where like I think I restarted the first mission like 80 times because every time I got caught or I had to shoot somebody I didn't want to, I would just go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And that is crazy and I shouldn't do that. But
no, I was trying to think of examples. Like Tenchu wasn't right, but there's been a few games where like, no, I gotta beat that level the right way. And if I didn't do it, I had to keep replaying it. I get really hooked on games where like, hey, you got a 4.97. You could have gotten a 5. You know, like Tony Hawk, this new Tony Hawk remaster. Yeah. Like, I'm obsessive with that. Like, I don't consider a map done until I've done everything on it. You know, so I'm progressing poorly through that.
Is there anything else you want to talk about this game in particular?
I feel bad. Well, I mean, did we cover really like the game? I mean, do you want to move on to what we would do to improve the movie?
We can do. I kind of just want to mention one more thing about the movie. As I was watching it again, like one of the things that bugs me about this one specifically is like Agent 47 has this very specific accent.
Yeah,
and it's because it's from what I've read, a South African-born Englishman who is doing the accent, and it's almost impossible, I think, to like mimic. I have no idea how you get that, but it's so distinct. And when you hear Timothy Olyphant talk like him, as him, it just totally breaks it. It's just like, that's not what Hitman sounds like. And you're not even trying.
I already forget. Did he even have an accent, or was he just?
No, he was just doing his normal voice.
Yeah, which is for the best. It would have been distracting anything.
I think it would have been distracting if he tried, but I wish they'd found somebody who was able to mimic it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer. But I would say, like, also, I didn't find the look to be all that affecting either. I think Timothy Olyphant's a little young. Like in the games, Agent 47's like in his mid 40s.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. He's a little too young, and I will say the one moment was like the last shot of the movie, but he cut a good silhouette of like. I like just the shot of him, and he had the just stark red tie and a moon over his shoulder.
I mean, that was definitely like a game callback. They've done that pose a bunch.
Okay, that's what I could tell. That was for the fans for sure. That was cool.
But you know what's interesting is I was watching this movie and I was just like, I kind of wish just they'd switched Doug Ray Scott and Timothy Olyphant and just had them play the same parts, because I think
they really could have.
He's got a more unique accent. I think it would have worked a little bit better. He's a little older.
Yeah,
I think it would have been better. But
I liked Olga and Timothy Olyphant's chemistry, though. I know it's totally wrong for the movie; it does not work at all. But like her flirting with him was really cute. And it was just like, oh, don't put her in the trunk again. Like I like they're playing off of each other.
I was trying to. What was? There's some movie that they have a real combative kind of. It's not The Chase, because that's not a good movie. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the game, but we had promised the people segments, Ron. So let's go into our next segment, which we're going to call the arcade, because those are also in theaters. Do people get it? Am I hitting it too hard?
Well, an audience is growing up listening to our podcast who doesn't know what arcades and or movie theaters are.
That's true. That's very true.
Well, back in our day, we used to it's funny because a standalone arcade, I mean, if we had, I don't know, like for Lansing Views, like obviously the Pinball Beats, but my go-to, if it wasn't Aladdin's Castle in the Meridian Mall, was anything that the AMC theater, eventually Celebration Cinema, like that's where arcades were always in movie theaters for me. Yeah,
definitely. It's the only time I would really ever play an arcade game is like just waiting for a movie to start.
Yeah. Bless you.
Excuse me. Goodness. So experience with the game, we talked about it a little bit. I would say probably the game I played the most was Silent Assassin Hitman 2. Is that the one you played the most too?
I think it's going because this would have been early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
That's where I get thrown off, because then when the PS3 started doing it, there was this is also Hitman 2, but not. That's the other one. And I think my experience with it was with like a PC Gamer demo disc.
Okay.
I just remember being like revelatory, like, oh my god, like, yeah, this is a game where I shoot. I think I almost like attributed it to like Siphon Filter, if you remember that game. I was really in the Siphon Filter on the PlayStation 1, and not that I thought this had anything to do with it, but I'm used to that kind of third-person shooter. And you touched on it earlier, like, you're not going to run around and shoot in this game because it's not designed to be a shooter. It's a bad shooter. The puzzle aspect was fun. So I remember like, oh my God, I could deliver a cake and get in the house and dress as like a waiter. And like the costumes was a unique angle to me that really stuck out, that I liked a lot.
And that's why, like I said, I kind of view this as a puzzle game, because there was a solution to the problem, which was, the problem being this guy's alive. And the solution is he shouldn't be alive anymore.
Shouldn't be alive.
But the way you approach it is up to you. So you can, go and get a sniper rifle and go from a distance and try and get the target that way. You can dress up as somebody and try and do close quarter stuff. And the whole idea is to not be detected.
I forget, were there ever like the accidents in the earlier games? Or was that kind of more of a major addition to later games?
I don't think that was that much. That wasn't really in Silent Assassin, the second one.
Yeah.
I think it was in Contracts and Blood Money, maybe that had kind of come in a little bit. I remember the first one. I want to say it must have been Blood Money. I think, where you could rig a grill to explode.
Yeah.
Like, so you would go and like tamper with the propane, and then the guy would go over there and try and fix it, and then he'd blow it.
Right.
So that they kind of introduced that kind of stuff. I mean, in Silent Assassin, you were still trying to not be detected.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of like sneaking around, and I think in one of the early missions, you could like go underneath the street and like put a bomb on somebody's car, like from the sewer.
Okay.
So I remember like stuff like that. I don't remember in that first one there being like a way to make it look like an accident.
Gotcha.
It was very clear that that guy was blown up. But,
right.
So, but I played that game just over and over and over again, just like finding different ways of.
That's what was so exciting. Like I would complete the mission. I was like, oh, how else could I have done that? You know, and that's what was so great because I eventually bought it, but like at the time I just played that demo over and over again. I was like, I just thought, oh, this is such a great game for a demo because I got so much replayability out of it.
I would say like as the game has gone on in different iterations, it's gotten a little sillier.
Yeah,
you've like gotten a little bit more,
right? Like I remember seeing.
Yeah, there's the costume part has kind of always been there, where you like, well, you mean like disguises, yes, but yeah, they have also like started doing that like DLC kind of like stuff where you can get like fun, like hey, look at him as a clown, and like,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
There's a rodeo Agent 47.
Yeah, he's a duck. Like I remember seeing something like that's not. He wouldn't wear that.
Yeah. But in the same way, so like they've made like the ability to like detect who's suspicious of you like a little bit more obvious. They've also just really made the missions a lot more like full of people. So I find them a little harder to navigate sometimes.
Yeah.
And,
well, these recent ones, like on the Xbox, I downloaded a couple of the missions, and what was cool about it is there's been two, and the first one kind of went to like a Game Pass thing, so it was the piecemeal style of game, but I think the collection was like a full game you could download. But I remember being almost intimidated, like, oh my god, there's a party going on. There's like so much to do, so it's just such an advancement of that concept, which is great. But I just never, I see my cousin do some really fun stuff on Twitch playing it, and remember like just watching other people play it, like, yeah, that's fun, but never really getting around to it myself. So, but liking what I saw, like it's funny that's a franchise that I'm not that familiar with. Like Hitman 2, that first one I never played the first Hitman, but Hitman 2 onward, I would just check in every third or fourth sequel and go, hey, cool, you still got the barcode. That's neat. You know,
I'll say I'm kind of glad they rebooted it, and I'll talk about the reboots when we do the next one. Talked about them a little bit, but it was getting real silly. Like I remember it was either Absolution or maybe it was even earlier than that. Like there were these like sexy nuns that you had to kill.
I remember that. They're like a whole gang of nuns.
that felt real silly.
I'm surprised these movies didn't take that concept and run with it. Although those are after the movies are made, but wow, they would have had a field day with that.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna go now. That'll close out this segment. We're gonna go into our next one where we talk about what could have made this movie better. So we'll go into the room for improvement.
Thoughts?
So, okay. So I know we talked about this a little bit with the review. I think you got to cast somebody else to begin with.
Yeah, you got my brain kind of working when you said, a pretty unique actor portraying him in the vocally, so it's like I'd almost would rather see an unknown. I think an unknown actor who is good, like, would give you that menace of like being the nondescript assassin when it's somebody you can watch in a Pepsi commercial, or not to diminish Timothy Olyphant, but he just wasn't the right choice, like you were saying. You need that kind of blank slate, and a fresh actor would have been a way to do it.
So I know they weren't gonna do this because they wanted a name, some kind of name.
Yeah.
And Timothy Olyphant had been in Live 3 and Die Hard, I think, at that point.
Yeah, you're right.
Or at the least they'd filmed it. Plus he was in Deadwood, so like people kind of knew who he was.
Knew him. Yeah.
But the guy who does the voice for him, they also modeled him after.
Oh,
so
shit.
Like, not only does he sound like him, he looks like him.
Yeah. Well, right away, like.
Yeah,
that was the obvious right choice, but Hollywood would never play ball.
No, nobody's gonna give it to somebody that literally no one has ever heard
artistic
of,
right
except
choice.
For your already like built-in fan base of who knows this game. But I don't know. He's probably too old to do like or wouldn't want to at this point. He's 60 now, but like when this originally came out, he was in his mid 40s. So like it would have been like the absolute perfect age. So that would have been interesting.
So in your version, do you cast him?
Name. Yeah, I think just do it. Like, like that. It's never possible to do the person who sounds exactly like him, plus he looks exactly like him.
That would have been cool. Like, I didn't know he looked like him.
Cool.
Like to hear the voice you're familiar with coming out of the actor that you know already, like that would have been big.
Like, I can't, like the guy who does the voice of Nathan Drake, he doesn't look like Nathan Drake, does he?
No.
I don't know what he looks like, but I don't think so. That's the
I mean,
only
you
other
can
one
almost play him, but he just doesn't look quite like him.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the first change I would have made. Is just let him try it. I'm gonna look up his name because it's driving me crazy that I can't remember.
Sure.
But then the other thing, I would take out the motivation for why Agent 47 is doing this is pretty muddled to me. It's
you're
why
right.
It's why I like Silent Assassin 2 so much. Is the motivation is very clear. Like, tried to give up being an assassin. Somebody kidnapped my mentor. I have to kill a bunch of people in order to get him back.
Yeah.
And like, so very clear, very like kind of high stakes.
Boom, boom.
You know, you can see why he's doing it. You can see why, you know, he wants to get rid of the people who are making him do it.
Yeah.
All of that, you know, great. So it needs to be a much more clear motivation. And this muddled political stuff that they put into this movie that granted is in the later movies or in the later games, just kind of like is really confusing. Like, make it very clear as you're introducing this character, and then finally actually introduce the character. Like, they did a movie without ever, like, with only backstory and flashbacks. Like, just do the whole clone thing. Just do it. Like, or don't make it a training thing, but like make it about that. Have it start there.
It's funny, a movie that kind of needed setup, like did what I always like. They assume you know the character already. Like, oh yeah, you've played the game, but it's like, but wait, like everyone, there's a lot of people who didn't.
They assumed you knew the character, and then didn't make the character like the thing that you knew.
Yeah, that is weird.
And then so that in order to get other people in, but then they didn't explain him ever. So like, you're kind of, either way, you're screwed. Like, that I can see why this movie didn't do well, because the people who knew it didn't like it, and the people who like didn't know it didn't know what it was, couldn't like figure it out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is there anything else you would have changed?
I don't know. I was trying to think, like, just be its own thing, but that, you know, it's such a product of the time. There's that like kind of post Matrix movies. You know, like what was exciting then? I'm trying to think of like just where I would have gone differently with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want it to, like, you know, if you've got to have like I'm fine with just watching the guy do a bunch of missions and he's like screwed over by the company and he's got to take revenge on them or something like that. You don't need that, but if, you know, there has to be a love interest of some type, I don't know. There's a way they could have done it, or maybe not have it be a love interest. Maybe be a kid. You know, but then you end up with like the professional. Like,
I mean, I can see what you mean, because you kind of do need a person.
You need that gateway for the audience to go like, oh, this world, okay. You know, you got to see the world through their eyes. But
it's David Bateson's the guy who does the voice.
Okay,
by the way.
Yeah. That would have been cool. That would have been really cool to see him play it. That would have added a lot.
So we've talked about all this stuff. I'm gonna say that in defiance of our tradition, right now is when we should do the rating, because we've summed everything up.
Yeah,
we've talked about our emotional investment, talked about how it could have been better.
Yep.
We've talked about the movie itself. This feels like the perfect time. Ron, out of what can we say? What are the things that he uses?
Red ties?
Out of 10 red ties, how many would you give this particular film? 2007's
Hitman. You know, again, I like Olga. I like Timothy Olyphant. You did point out that he's not the right choice for this, and you know, when you going through the lens, I want to say, I mean, I feel like I'm being a little too nice. I give it 5. I'd really give it a 4, but if I were more of a video game, more familiar with the world, I'd give it a 4. But because of just my enjoyment from the movie, it was just average in every way, and I was a little bored with the action stuff.
I'm going to be a little bit kinder and say, like, as a movie, if, like you were saying, take everything away, I'm going to give it a 6. As a Hitman movie, I'm going to give it, I was gonna say 5, but I think actually I'm going to drop it to 3. Just cuz like the character, it's called Hitman. Like you have to like have that character in there, and he's not there.
Yeah.
It's the things he does is there, put on costumes and shoot people, but the character himself is not there. So I got to give it a 3. So I'm going to say
that's fair.
I'm just going to stick with 3. I'm I could average them out, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I guess averaged out it's 4.5. I don't know why
Yeah.
But I don't want to, so I'm going to say 3.
No argument from me.
Okay. So Ron,
yeah,
the thing we promised the people is over. So let's go into our bullshit, and let's go into the lobby and talk about whatever we want.
All right. Well, in the lobby, what's new with you? What's your bullshit?
So I as I've said before on this podcast, I've been having a hard time reading, just because just sustained attention that you have to parse out other like words and stuff.
I get it.
In a long format has been difficult, but I think I've broken through.
Oh, good.
And I finished Gideon the Ninth, which was the book I was reading last time that took me like 2 months to finish. And then I started another one, which is from Charles Yu, called How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe.
Oh, that sounds cool.
And it is ostensibly it seems like it's a field guide to what do you do when everybody has a personal time machine or can very easily get a personal time machine, where the idea of time travel is commonplace, and going through a multiverse and creating multiverse because everybody is interacting and making different timelines all the time. So it's supposed to be about how do you, exist in that kind of world.
Wow,
but it quickly becomes clear that it's like part memoir of the main character's relationship with his father, who invented time travel, and then wasn't able to still wasn't able to have a satisfying life. And it's also a rumination on what it means to be human, because one of the conceits of time travel is you can't change the past. And the thing that everybody does basically is go and relive their most painful moment. Like that's what everyone does with time travel, because they want to change it, but you can't. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be a philosophical, like kind of existentialist book, but it is. And it's surprisingly a very quick read. I'm almost done with it, and I only started a couple days ago.
Nice. I'll have to start that up.
And Ron, I think actually you would like it because it's so internal. It doesn't require you to have to imagine crazy scenarios in order to understand where it's coming. It's more like a memoir where it's just the person's internal.
I was gonna love that, because it's funny. I used to read so much, and it's only in the last few years where I've really looked at this kind of thing with aphantasia, and maybe that's why I kind of got out of it. But I loved reading, and a book I love that's a kind of a surprise autobiography was Stephen King on writing.
Oh yeah,
it's so good because he'll just be like, so then I woke up and my nose was bleeding because I've been snorting NyQuil, and so when you write, make sure you do 5,000.
So anyway, adverbs are bullshit.
It's like, what am I reading? It was so good though. But I like that kind of, it's so interesting because I'm not reading per se, but I've been going through Audible of the Dune series, and it's my favorite books, and I love the first one so much. But I also really, really love The Emperor of Dune, and and it's a bummer because I was kind of working my way through them all.
Such a weird fucking book.
It is a very weird book, and I forgot about the whole finding his journals and all that stuff, and it's a very interesting. But for some reason, I really enjoy listening to it because he never goes into the Spacing Guild's long ships. He's never the details here. It's descriptive enough where I don't get hung up on the details. There's some books I've read, reading Jurassic Park as a kid really bummed me out because it was very I'd seen the movie 13 times, and I was yeah. And I'm reading the book, and it's Alan Grant stood 6'5" with a giant burly beard and a red flannel shirt that was tattered. And I'm like, wait, what? No, it's Sam Neill. Like, what is this?
I do remember being bummed out that the Alan Grant in the book was not Sam Neill.
Yeah, I was like, and he kept talking about like taking his big burly arm. He pushed the scientist. I'm like, my brain is filling it in. It's hard to explain. Like, I'm not seeing the pictures in my head, but reading it, it's like, oh, Sam Neill's going to do that.
You remember the attachment, I imagine, to how he made you feel based on his physicality.
So I think emotionally,
and it's not
character,
that.
Yeah. So when you're describing this giant bushy beard he has, I'm like, wait, he had a hat. That's weird.
That guy doesn't feel like Alan Grant, because he doesn't feel like Sam Neill. So Sam Neill isn't like a guy who pushes people around and stuff.
So I'm really worried that if I start up Game of Thrones, because I never read the books because I was so into I have most of them, but I never got around to reading them because I was loving the show so much. I thought I'd have a nightmare with that because I'm so attached to what everyone looks like in the show, and if there was any differences, I'd be like, what? So I don't know.
I would say because I started reading the books before I watched the show, but then it took so goddamn long for the books to come out that I eventually had a couple come out, at least one while the show was going, and it did adjust how I viewed the characters internally, at least how I imagined them, and I did find that frustrating. But at the same time, I would be interested to see like you reading those books, because one of the things that they do is they're so fucking descriptive, and so specific that it may be a more enjoyable reading experience for you because they're providing just so much detail in the text.
Yeah. It's funny. It's weird because I think I was just using Dune as an example, but maybe I am really missing out on that because it's not that descriptive. But I just think the prose and the lines of dialogue are so good. I'm always hung up on that, like the fear is the mind killer, little speeches like that. I just I think about them once I'm not reading the book anymore. But I think if it was like hyper descriptive, then at least it's doing the work for me. I'm like, oh, these guys have to go over a mountain. Okay, cool. Like so.
The only problem I have is when there's too many fucking characters.
Yeah,
I can't keep in Gideon the Ninth. I was realizing part of the problem I was having is there are like 20 fucking characters you have to keep track of, and it's really tricky to know what they are, especially because they'll use nicknames for each other, or they'll call them by their house designation, or they'll call them by their title instead of their first name, or they'll do a diminutive version of their first name or a nickname, and it's just like, I don't know. So it's not just 20 characters, but it's 50 fucking names you have to keep track. And it's
different
just
houses
it drives me crazy sometimes. So that's another reason why that took so long. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, man?
I'm playing a lot of VR. I got the Oculus Quest 2, and that's been really fun. And but it's kind of bittersweet because it's better in every way, but there hasn't really been a lot new out. So I'm just playing the same games I was playing on the old one. But I sold my old one to my buddy who really wants one, and so he's excited to get it. So it's a nice, helped him out. I've got a newer toy, and I like my toys. So that's it.
Cool.
That's all I got.
Okay. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Pixel Theater, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed it. Next time, we are going to be talking about the other Hitman movie, because I don't know. I feel like it's nuts that there are two of these, but it must be just that the games keep selling. So they're like, we gotta be doing something wrong.
Like, how was the box office?
That's a good question. You know what? Usually we talk about that, and we didn't because I assumed it was dismal.
Yeah, I did too. I wrote it off as like, well, that didn't work. Wait, they got a second one. And I think it's the same writer for both of these movies.
It is
funny.
Okay. So, you could kind of, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't as big a hit as they wanted it to be, because it was a $24 million budget. It made $101 million.
Holy shit.
So, I guess it was just, not enough. So, if you double the budget for,
well, I'll say you got to work in
all that shit,
all the advertising bullshit.
So it's still doubled its money.
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess they wanted it to be more.
Yeah. You can't win now, like you look at like Hellboy. Like Hellboy came out, was considered a failure, but it sold so damn well on DVD. They got a second one. That market doesn't exist anymore. They don't give a shit about DVD sales or like streaming. You have to deliver opening weekend or else you're dead. That sucks. That's such a bummer.
And it does suck because especially like a movie like Hellboy, if they'd been able to finish that trilogy, like that sells forever. That's like, that could be like maybe not as profitable, but it could have been like a minor Star Wars. If you've got the Hellboy trilogy, like it would have been great. But instead we got a remake that nobody cared about. No. Like really, it's like you're gonna remake it. I do think it's partially that the artist won't let them tell the story because he's not done with it yet.
Yeah,
that's what I remember reading, and then it kind of got too long. Also, none of Guillermo del Toro's movies ever. He's like attached to like 80 things, and he makes one movie every 10 years or something. That's a little bit longer than that, but anyway, okay. That's gonna wrap up this episode, everyone.
Bye, friends.
If you like the show, go on your favorite podcast app, write a review, give us a rating. You can find us on Twitter. We are at pixel_theater _ again because I was late to the game and I'm not creative. And we're also on Facebook. You can find us there.
Yeah,
we're all over the place. We are
share memes with us.
Yeah, share memes. Those are fun. We are I don't know, beholden to our social media gods. Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg really just own us, and it's okay because they own the rest of humanity too.
Yeah, so, doesn't matter.
So that'll wrap up this episode, everyone. We hope you're having a good time, or at least as good a time as you can given the circumstances. Stay safe, stay inside, wear your mask, all that stuff. And we will see you back here next time. Bye. This is a technical difficulties production.